Before I get into what's plaguing your paycheck every single payday, I want you to know you're not alone. According to Yale Global, we are in the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression of the 1930s. More than 25% of people have no savings, 28% of people have no retirement, millennials will need $2 million to retire, and the average debt is $16,000. We have a serious problem right now as a whole, and the only person who can fix their financial problem is you. See, we were taught how to get into our financial problems, but most of us were never taught how to get out of them. Lucky for you, you're one decision away from fixing your financial problems forever. There are two basic financial objectives you attempt to meet on a daily basis. Your current lifestyle is paid by labor. You go to work, you get paid. You don't go to work, you don't get paid. It's a simple concept we all know and understand. Well, most people don't want to work for the rest of their lives, and if you're watching this video, you're probably one of those people. So if you don't want to work for the rest of your life, that means your future lifestyle must be funded by investments. But here's the reality and what you need to think about. If you're struggling financially right now, if you're living paycheck to paycheck and you're going into work almost every day, that means for the majority of you watching right now, you probably have no money to put to the side to save and invest. But we already agreed that if you don't want to work for the rest of your life, you have no choice but to invest for your future. So if you aren't investing in your future right now, that means that your future retired lifestyle is practically non-existent. So how do we fix that? What exactly is causing this shortage of money? Well, there's 4 challenges that are keeping you from hitting your 2 financial objectives. You have inflation, taxes, debt, and big business. Can you guess which one is the culprit hiding in plain sight on your paycheck every single payday? Yep, you guessed it, taxes. But what most people don't know is the taxes you pay every single payday is a direct cause of the debt that you're in right now. You're practically throwing away money because of the taxes you pay and the debt you owe. Let me prove it to you. Let's say that you earn $50,000 a year. Well, because a W-2 is the highest tax code, you're taxed around $16,000 a year, which means you take home $34,000. So you basically work for 12 months, you're taxed 28 to 33% or 4 months worth of your pay, and you take home 8 months of your pay. Now, I'm sure you can already see a problem here. You have 12 months worth of bills, but the government is forcing you to pay those bills with only 8 months of your pay. And let me show you how they tricked you into taking on more debt than you can even afford. See, when you go out and buy a new car, you buy a new home or lease a new apartment, you get a new credit card, you're approved for these items based on your gross income, right? So the $16,000 you lost in taxes, you borrow right back to get from your $34,000 lifestyle back to your $50,000 lifestyle. But as we all know, debt comes at a cost. When you borrowed that $16,000, you didn't borrow it interest-free. By the time you pay that $16,000 back, you're going to pay upwards of $24,000 back because of interest and fees. And this all started because of what? Taxes. So you can see why the money you're left with after taxes just isn't enough to cover your regular bills and the debt you took on because your take-home pay just wasn't enough to cover your bills in the first place. After you pay your rent or mortgage, your car note and car insurance, your groceries, utilities, your gas, childcare and daycare expenses, and your debt, you're practically left with nothing. Now, most people's solution to this problem is to get a second job or work overtime, pick up more hours. But remember, taxes work the same regardless. This is most people's solution because most people think they have an income problem when in actuality, they have a cash flow problem. Well, what's the difference? See, income is measured in dollars, but cash flow is measured in time. And this is something that a lot of people miss. Now, let's say that I make $1 million a year, but my expenses are $2 million a year. Well, that means after 6 months, I'll run out of money, right? So my cash flow is only 6 months. Well, if you make $80,000 a year, but your expenses are only $40,000 a year, well, your cash flow is 2 years. See the difference? See, a lot of people think they have an income problem, and they really don't. They have a cash flow problem. You see, if the rent is due on the 5th, but you get paid on the 8th, it's not that you don't have the rent money, you just don't have it on time. So guess what happens? A late fee is generated, right? So anytime the lack of money costs you money, you're in a cash flow negative cycle. And all we just talked about was the rent. What about the times you don't have your money on time for your cell phone bill, your utility bills, your credit card bill? more and more late fees, which causes an even bigger shortage of money. So what we have to do is we have to get your money back to create what's called positive cash flow, which of course is the opposite. The abundance of money saves you money. If you look here, you can see which tax code you fall into. A W-2 is taxed 28 to 33%, and the biggest issue is that the government's philosophy of your W-2 is you work, they take their taxes off the top, and then you get to spend whatever's left over. 1099s tell the government their business works, that person's business needs to spend first, and then the business needs to be taxed the net effect of about 18 to 23%. Then you have investors whose money works, their money is reinvested, then their money makes them even more money, and the profit their money makes them is taxed less than 15%. Now, if you had to choose which way you'd want to be taxed, I'm sure most, if not all of you, would choose to be taxed less than 15%. Well, the safest way for you to do so is to transition from the highest tax bracket to the middle and then to the lowest. And the way you do that with your current job and income is through cash flow management. So here's how you create a positive cash flow. Again, remember our goal is to fix your cash flow problem because you don't have an income problem. First, you must minimize your taxes by adjusting your W-4. Now, what does that mean? Now, this is very important because most Americans have their W-4 filled out incorrectly. Even my own mother had hers filled out incorrectly. The W-4 is the form that you completed when you first got your job. It tells your employer how much to withhold of your money for taxes. Well, the problem is if you fill your W-4 out incorrectly, your job will hold more taxes out to give to the government on your behalf. So filling out your W-4 correctly will reduce your taxes and increase your take-home pay. You then strategize and use that increase in your take-home pay to start paying off your debts one by one, and you also must minimize your expenses. When you think of how much of your bills are each month, think about how much your financial situation would change if you didn't have debts to pay each month. If you could get rid of some of your unnecessary spending, you'd have more money, right? Of course, because you create more cash flow. So in summary, you minimize your taxes. One approach is the W-4 adjustment. You minimize your debt using the money that you now have from your W-4 adjustment. And then you look at your habits. You look at your expenses. What is draining you every single month that if you just created a new habit or got rid of that fee or that expense could create positive cash flow from an expense standpoint? So you basically created 3 new income streams from the same money that you were making before. Taxes came back in, debt went out, which brought more income back in, and your expenses from big business came back into your household. Now, there's an additional adjustment you can make to your W-4, both legally and ethically. And before I get into what it is and how it works, I want you to take a look at some of the testimonies we have of people who learned our cash flow W-4 adjustment strategy and implemented what they learned. You can see a cash flow of $150 per month, $400 a month, $500 a month, $1,100 a month, over $2,000 per month, all due to this one strategy. Now, to be clear, they still have their jobs, but we taught them how to maximize their income on their jobs by minimizing their tax liability legally. We didn't tell them to claim children who aren't theirs. We didn't tell them to claim tax exempt when they really aren't. We didn't tell them to put an outrageous number of allowances that they can't show an explanation for at tax time. No, we simply showed them how to gain access to additional tax breaks doing something the government wants them to do. See, when the government wants you to do something, they'll give you a tax break for it. When you have children, don't they give you a tax break? When you buy a home, don't they give you a tax break? When you buy a car, don't they give you a tax break? When you get married, don't they give you a tax break? Well, did you know that you can get access to more than 450 tax breaks and tax deductions if you owned a home-based business? Now, before you scare yourself away from the video, take a look at this. This is page 2 of your W-4, a page most people don't even know exists. And the reason they don't know it exists is because this page is for people who have a job but also have a home-based business on the side as well. Now, we already agreed that when the government wants you to do something, they give you tax breaks, right? Well, if the government didn't want you to have a home-based business, this second page wouldn't exist. You can go to irs.gov right after you finish watching this video and find this form in its entirety so you can see it for yourself. See, the people you see here, along with tens of thousands of other people just like them and just like you and I, not only ensured their W-4s were filled out correctly, but they also took advantage of the tax breaks the government gives home-based business owners to legally, ethically, and morally reduce their tax liability on their jobs. They have successfully transitioned their income from the highest tax bracket to the middle tax bracket, and eventually we're going to get them to the lowest tax bracket. And not only did they reduce their taxes on their job, but at the end of the year, they can now legally write off their lifestyle for being home-based business owners. And I'm pretty sure you're like, well, how? Well, when you're a home-based business owner, you now have the ability to legally write off things you pay for on a monthly basis already. Just take a look. The W-4 adjustment allows you to say, hey, government, listen, I need you to stop taxing me so much because I now have a home-based business and I need that money that you were taking out in taxes to pay for my business expenses. Here's a quick example to illustrate some of your everyday expenses and every month expenses that can now be written off at tax time. Here you can see your mortgage, a portion of your utilities, a portion of your cell phone bill, some of your mileage that you drive, some of your meals and entertainment, your internet. And when you look at the total in the example that we have here, the total deductions listed is about $12,000. Now, normally, if you would have been taxed that, you would have been taxed about 30%. Remember, we said 28 to 33% when you're taxed on your W-2. And so we've saved you $3,600 in this example in taxes alone. And let's just say you decide, hey, I want to build the business. And let's just say that you earn $2,400 in the 12 months worth of being in the business. That means your total earned through what you saved in taxes and what you earned in the business is about $6,000. Now, $6,000 might not sound like a lot, but let me show you what it would take, what your other options are to earn $6,000 a year passively. See, in a 1% interest-bearing account, which not very many accounts out there even pay that, you would need $600,000 in that account to earn $6,000 a year. At a 3% interest-bearing account, $200,000, 6% interest-bearing account, $100,000. Or you can decide, hey, I'm going to open up a low-cost, low-risk business, and I can get that same $6,000 passively. See, your business is your number one asset. So if you don't have a business, you're missing out. You have to strategize your way to wealth. Now, some of you are probably asking yourself the very popular question we tend to get from people. Well, if I adjust my income now, what happens to my tax refund at the end of the year? Well, it's important to understand what a tax refund really is. See, re means again and fund means money. So a refund means you're just getting your money all over again. Kind of like when you take an item back to the store and they give you your money back, except when you get a tax refund, you're saying, hey, I don't want my money anymore during the year. Give it to me in a lump sum at the end of the year. See, the government tells you that your refund comes from your own wallet or purse. And the government tells you that taking the money up front on your paycheck and putting the money in some type of savings account or paying down debts is a better option. They're telling you this. But let me further illustrate what the difference is when you take an adjustment now versus when you take a refund later. Let's say for illustrative purposes, you make your W-4 adjustment and you increase your take-home pay by $500 a month. If you take that money and instead of spending it, you invest it every month at 8% interest for 15 years, your $500 a month will turn into $173,000. Now that same $500 a month invested at 8% for 30 years, because of compound interest, will turn into $745,000. That's a lot of money, right? So let's show what happens if you don't adjust your W-4 and you decide to get a lump sum refund instead. Well, that $500 a month is equivalent to a $6,000 refund each year, again, hypothetically speaking. If you get a $6,000 refund every year for 15 years, you've only received $90,000. And if you're like most people, you spend your tax refund instead of invest it. Again, you're not alone. Now, that $6,000 you receive each year for 30 years is $180,000, but remember that $6,000 gets taxed as income the following year when you file taxes. So the reality is that $6,000 refund is truly a $4,000 refund. You multiply that by 30 years and you've only received $120,000 as opposed to the $745,000 you would have turned your money into had you took your adjustment up front and invested your money instead of taking your lump sum refund at the beginning of every year. See, these are the money principles and financial strategies we teach you. These are the principles and strategies that we weren't taught in school, because had they taught us this in school, the government, the banks, and big business wouldn't have been able to profit and capitalize off of our lack of knowledge our entire adult life. But you can fix it. You can stand up today and say, look, no more taking advantage of me.